108,000 people lost their jobs in a single month. January of this year. The worst start since the Great Recession. Amazon, 16,000. Meta, 1,000. Salesforce cut 4,000 and didn't even flinch. Its CEO smiled and explained that artificial intelligence now does half the work. But this video isn't about mass layoffs. The news covers those, and it does it every day. Every headline, another number, another chart, another company. All of it, noise. We're going to talk about what's behind the noise, about the quiet, the slow, the deep. What's happening not in the labor market, but inside a person who suddenly realizes what they spent 10, 20, 30 years of their life on is no longer needed. Not because they did a bad job, but because the rules changed and nobody told them. This isn't about technology. This is about you. Look at your day. It doesn't matter who you are, employee or business owner, freelancer or surgeon, programmer or architect. You wake up and start doing what you did yesterday. Analyzing, preparing, coordinating, creating, checking, responding. 80% of your day, ritual. Form pretending to be substance. Motion pretending to be direction. And now, a fact worth sitting with. A significant chunk of that ritual, a machine is already doing. Not theoretically, not in a lab, right now. How it works is worth understanding, because without that, it all sounds like another scare story. And no, this isn't a smart computer. It's something more interesting than that. At the core, large language models. GPT from OpenAI, Claude from Anthropic, Gemini from Google. The principle is ironically simple. The model reads a massive body of text, essentially a large part of everything humanity has ever written, and learns to predict the next word. Just the next word, billions of times. And in the process, something happens that nobody expected. The model begins to absorb the structure of knowledge. Not like a human, without consciousness, without experience. But it detects connections between concepts, picks up the logic of arguments, cause and effect chains. Not because someone explained it, but because without that, it can't correctly guess the next word. But that was yesterday's news. Today's, agents. A model that just answers questions? That's a chatbot. What's appeared now is fundamentally different. An AI agent is a system that receives a task, breaks it into steps on its own, finds the right tools on its own, executes, checks the result, and fixes errors, without a human in the loop. Cursor, a code editor where the agent runs in a cloud virtual machine, writes code, tests it, and comes back with a finished result and a video demo. Perplexity released a digital worker that distributes tasks among several models. One searches for data, another analyzes, a third formats. OpenAI built Codex, a system where you launch multiple agents in parallel, each on its own task, and manage them like projects. Microsoft embedded agents into Copilot. They work in the background, handling routine tasks while you're not even looking. And this is February and March of this year. Not forecasts, not beta versions, products that are already working. The next step? Multi-agent systems. Several agents, each with its own specialization, interacting with each other. One gathers market data, another analyzes trends, a third prepares a decision and pushes it into the CRM. No human between them. An assembly line where every link is an algorithm. Gartner and Forrester are calling 26 the breakout year for multi-agent systems. 65% of companies have already launched pilot projects. Global AI spending, $1.3 trillion by 29. Now, look at this from the right angle. These agents aren't assistants, they're replacements. They don't help you work, they work instead of you. And with every month, more instead of, less alongside. Here's why it matters. When a model writes a legal document, it doesn't know the law. It's read millions of documents and absorbed legal logic, which arguments follow which, how caveats are phrased, where precedent references go. When it analyzes a medical scan, it doesn't see a tumor. It's compared millions of scans and learned to tell the pattern of healthy tissue from an anomaly, statistically, without intuition, but with accuracy that doesn't drop after the 6th hour. Each new version, a leap, not a step. GPT-3 wrote like a diligent student. GPT-4 like a seasoned professional. Between them, less than 2 years. The progress isn't linear, it's exponential, like compound interest, barely noticeable at first, then suddenly. And right now, suddenly. This isn't science fiction. This is Tuesday. 51% of workers are afraid of losing their job this year. Every other person. But they're afraid in silence. Because saying it out loud means admitting you're replaceable. And that's the most painful word for someone who spent their whole life trying to become irreplaceable. And this is where the real conversation begins. Not about unemployment, about identity. The first question at any party, any introduction, what do you do? Not who are you, not what interests you, but what do you do? Because in our culture, a person equals their function. You are what you do. Take it away, and who are you? Try it right now. Imagine that tomorrow you're let go. Not for cause, for optimization. They thank you for your years of service and politely walk you to the door. And there you are, standing on the street. Who are you? Not what you can do. Who are you? If that's terrifying, you already understand what this conversation is about. Nobody asks that question while everything's working. And then one day, you see something you can't wave away. You're a lawyer with 15 years of experience, and you know that analyzing a 200-page contract takes weeks. Nuances, precedents, context that only a practitioner sees. And then a colleague shows you how an AI system does it in minutes, with references to court rulings you'd have spent 3 days finding. Not approximately, precisely. You're one brain. It's a million networked together. And it doesn't take vacations. You're an entrepreneur. You spent 5 years building a team, and your competitor just replaced content, support, and analytics with 3 services. Costs dropped tenfold. Speed went up. He's not smarter than you. He just made the decision you've been putting off. Because making it means admitting that the people you hired and trained are no longer needed. And that's a decision that makes you sick. You're a designer, a photographer, an illustrator. Your whole life you built a style, a language, a way of seeing. And then you watch AI generate from a text description in 30 seconds what would take you a week. And it's not almost real. It's already so real that only someone who knows where to look can tell the difference. And at some point, everyone, the lawyer, the doctor, the entrepreneur, the creative, the engineer, catches themselves on one question. Not, will they replace me? But, if what I spent my best years on can now be had for a subscription, what's my price? That's not a labor market question. That's an existential crisis wrapped in corporate jargon. Look at the market. Not the headlines, the reality. Entry-level positions are disappearing first. In the tech sector, junior vacancies dropped 67%. In the UK, minus 46 in a year. Entry-level, the thing every career started with, is ceasing to exist. Not shrinking, vanishing. The ladder the next generation was supposed to climb, dismantled. The first rung was taken, the second, automated. On the third stands an algorithm, and it's not going anywhere. Optimists say new professions will emerge, and they're right. Historically, every disruption created something new. The loom destroyed weavers and created the textile industry. The computer destroyed bookkeepers and created programmers. But there's a nuance nobody mentions. Between the old profession vanished and the new one appeared, there's a gap. And in that gap lives a real person, with a mortgage, with kids, with a self-image built over decades. And they're told, retrain. And they sit there thinking, what if I don't want to be a new version? What if the old one is me? Your whole life, they told you, find your calling, become an expert, invest in skills. And you invested. You spent 20,000 hours becoming who you are. And now it turns out, those 20,000 hours depreciated, like old equipment, written off, and nobody plans to compensate. This isn't fear, this is grief, for a version of yourself that's still alive, but no longer needed. What do they offer instead? Retrain. Sounds reasonable, looks like a solution. But think about it. You're 40. You spent 15 years building expertise. You're one of the best. And now they tell you, forget it, start over. Compete with 20-year-olds who grew up with these tools and have nothing to unlearn, because they have nothing to remember. It's like telling a grandmaster, chess is canceled. Now everyone plays poker. Here are the rules. Good luck. And he sits there holding them and understands. It's not about poker. It's about the fact that 30 years of chess are now worth nothing. This isn't a new beginning. This is a reset to zero. And the retraining industry? Yet another market that grows not because it works, but because people are panicking. Instead of find yourself, they now sell reboot yourself. Different packaging, same mechanics. A customer who always comes back. There's a paradox worth seeing coldly. Companies lay off people, and their stock goes up. The market celebrates every round of cuts. In investor language, laid off 5,000 sounds like increased margins. And those 5,000 people, they don't fit in that formula. They're a line item that got written off. A person spends 5 years on a master's degree, 10 on a career, takes out loans for their children's education, and then finds out they were replaced by a service that costs $20 a month. And the market responds to this with growth, because to the market, you're a cost line. When the line disappears, the balance sheet improves. Nothing personal, just optimization. There's a special irony that deserves its own line. People get laid off, and then new ones get hired to train the AI that replaced the previous ones. You're literally training your own replacement for less money. This isn't even cynicism, it's business logic that passed the point of absurdity and didn't notice. And there's a quieter version. They don't fire you, they deflate you, gradually. Tasks get taken away one by one. First, the routine, and you're happy about it. then the analysis, then the strategy. And at some point, you're sitting in meetings where your presence is decoration. Your recommendations get checked in AI before anyone finishes listening. You weren't fired. You were bypassed. Like furniture. Not in the way, but not needed. And that hurts more than an honest layoff. Because a layoff is at least clarity. This is a slow disappearance at full salary. There's a concept in medicine, phantom pain. When a limb is amputated, the person keeps feeling pain in what's no longer there. The brain hasn't had time to rewire. It sends signals into the void and gets pain in return. Losing a profession works the same way. It's as if you were amputated from who you were, but you keep waking up feeling like you're about to go to work. Keep thinking in categories that no longer exist. Keep hurting from what's already gone. This used to apply to miners and factory workers. Now, to programmers, lawyers, financial analysts, designers, copywriters, analysts. People who were promised, your work requires intellect, and intellect can't be automated. Turns out, it can. Language models already write texts that pass academic review, produce business plans investors can't distinguish from human-made, generate code that compiles and runs. Copilot writes for the programmer. Cursor replaces half a dev team. Systems like Midjourney and Sora create visual content, from illustrations to video, in seconds. Deepfakes with real people's faces and voices pass verification by trained specialists. Every month, a new capability that seemed impossible yesterday. And the speed at which they appear, that's what changes everything. A miner used to be told, your mine is closing. Brutal, but clear. The mine was physical, the coal was concrete. You could see it disappear. But when you're told, a prompt does that now, you can't see what exactly vanished. Because what vanished isn't a workplace. What vanished is value, what you knew how to do. And that's invisible. Which is why it hurts differently. And it drags everything with it. Relationships, because a person who doesn't know who they are without work becomes an impossible partner. Friendships, because what do you talk about when the only shared topic is no longer relevant? Self-worth, because it was built for years on the foundation of, I'm valued, I'm paid. Remove the foundation, and everything starts to crack. Slowly, invisibly, but inside, collapse. And it's not just about work. It's wider, much wider. AI is already shaping your worldview by deciding what you see in your feed, already writing texts you read as authored by a human, and you can't tell, because it imitates not just style, but argumentation. Already analyzing your resume and deciding whether a living person will see it. Already calculating your credit score. Already setting the price of your insurance based on data nobody asked your permission to collect. Already recommending sentences in court. And a few weeks ago, it became clear just how serious this is. The Pentagon offered Anthropic, the company that created Claude, a $200 million contract. The condition: remove restrictions on using the model for autonomous weapons and domestic surveillance. Anthropic refused. The Defense Department declared it a supply chain risk. Trump called the company woke and ordered federal agencies to stop using their products. That same day, OpenAI announced it had signed a deal with the Pentagon. This isn't a tech story. This is the moment it became visible. Whoever controls AI controls power. And the question of what this technology is allowed to do isn't being decided by scientists or society, but by generals and CEOs behind closed doors. And the main thing? None of those who should be accountable for these decisions can explain how exactly they're made. This isn't a metaphor. A modern language model is hundreds of billions of numerical parameters. The connections between them formed during training, not because an engineer wrote them, but because they emerged on their own as the most efficient way to predict the next word. Even the team that built the model can't trace why, in a specific case, it made a specific decision. They see the input, they see the output, and in between, what honest researchers call opacity and everyone else calls magic. Except that magic already underpins credit scores, medical diagnoses, and sentencing recommendations. This isn't a technical problem, it's a problem of power, and you're on the other side of the screen. The Industrial Revolution stretched across decades. People had time to adjust. The AI revolution doesn't give that time. Between interesting technology and it replaced your department, weeks. The human psyche evolved for slow change. It got an avalanche. And here's what happens inside that avalanche. You see that AI is already doing something similar to what you do. For now, with mistakes. But you see the speed at which it's improving. And you understand, this isn't years, this is months. And you start working more, staying late, taking on everything. Not because you want to, but because you're trying to prove you're still needed. That a human is more than an algorithm. And you don't fully believe it yourself. A new kind of burnout. Not from work, from the fear of becoming unnecessary. There's already a term for it. FOBO. Fear of becoming obsolete. Fear of going stale. Like a phone. Like software without updates. You're being evaluated on the same scale as a device. Still relevant? Still updating? And you feel that gap as guilt. As if it's your fault that technology moves faster than the nervous system. Because it's not just about you. It's about everyone who signed the unspoken contract with society. Study, get a skill, become useful, and you'll be safe. From the programmer to the dentist, from the designer to the driver, billions of people signed that deal. Invested decades in education that now ages faster than an iPhone. Took on loans on the promise that the degree would pay off. In the United States alone, $1.7 trillion in student debt. These are people who haven't finished paying for a ticket to a train that's no longer running. And the other side of the contract just stood up and left the room, without warning, with a press release about optimization. Governments talk about retraining and allocate budgets that cover a tenth of the problem. Corporations say, people first, at the same presentation where they announce layoffs. Coaches sell skills of the future without knowing what that future looks like, even 6 months out. Entrepreneurs stay quiet because their business models are cracking too. An agency with 10 copywriters now needs 2. A law firm gets by on a subscription. A clinic with 1 radiologist and an AI assistant. The team you built over years suddenly became the biggest line item you could cut. The pain is the same. The grief is the same. Identity collapse. Silence in the evening. Staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning. Nobody says out loud that millions of people are living through a state for which the language has no word. Unemployment exists, but for, I still have a job, but I already know it's temporary. There's no word. For the quiet panic eating you from the inside while everything looks fine on the outside, there's no word. For waiting for your own press release, there's no word. And the most interesting part, they did nothing wrong, did everything right, studied, worked, played by the rules, and the rules changed, quietly, without warning. And the person who did everything right is standing in front of the void again, with a mortgage and 2 kids. Human value isn't in function. It never was. We just agreed to pretend otherwise because it's convenient for the economy. Push a button, get a result. But a person isn't a button. And the fact that a machine pushes buttons better doesn't make the person less valuable. It makes the buttons less valuable. What makes you, you isn't a skill. It's the ability to find meaning where there is none, to feel someone else's pain as your own, to make decisions without a right answer, to take risks not for profit, but for something you can't even put into words, to create not on command, but because you can't not create. A neural network imitates the form, but behind the form, nobody's home. It has the how, but not the why. Will we be able to see it? Separate ourselves from our function? Look in the mirror and see not a title, not a business card, not a profile, but a person? For most, that's the scariest thing, because behind the mask of profession, there's an emptiness they've been running from their whole life. A silence they've filled with deadlines, meetings, busyness. And now busyness is being taken away, and the silence returns. And in it, the question that was always there, but nobody asked. Who am I if you remove everything I do? I don't know how this ends. Nobody does, and whoever says otherwise is either wrong or selling a course on professions of the future. But one thing I see: those who survived previous collapses, mining towns, the dot-com bust, industrial zones, all say the same thing. Not "I retrained," but "I realized that I am not my job." And that was the most painful and the most important discovery. Maybe that's the paradox. The machine takes the function and at the same time gives you the chance for the first time to look at yourself without it, without the suit, without the title, without the answer to "What do you do?" Just you. Not comforting, scary as hell, but honest. And honesty isn't for sale, which is why nobody offers it, except silence. Silence is always honest. And if right now you feel the ground shifting, don't run. Don't rush to retrain in a panic. Don't buy a course on how to stay relevant in the age of AI. Stop. 1 hour. No podcasts about AI, no articles about the future, no advice from people who don't know themselves what tomorrow looks like. Just you and the question, who am I without everything I do? The answer might be quiet, frightening, the kind that won't fit on any resume. But it's yours. The one thing AI can't generate. If this landed, leave one word, not a pretty one, an honest one. Subscribe. We don't do reassurance here. We look at how things actually work. No illusions, no promises, no everything will be fine. Because everything will be fine, that's a line a machine already generates. And it does it more convincingly than most people.